and the extrovert. And in the history of our society, the introvert's gotten short shrift. You know, everybody says, oh, it's much better to be an extrovert. Wait a minute. Being an introvert or an extrovert has to do with how you relate to the world. If you're an extrovert, you're somebody who gets re-energized by being with people. Like the minister who gets finished preaching on Sunday is so hyped up and wants to go out to brunch, or the minister who goes home and takes a nap. So there's a difference between the extrovert and the introvert. It has nothing to do with how you are in the world. It has to do with how you relate to it and what re-energizes you. An introvert is someone who needs to find that quiet place away, that quiet, protective, womb-like, cocoon-like place that surrounds you and makes you feel renewed in the quiet. Whereas an extrovert is somebody who feels renewed and refreshed in the noise, in the encounter out there in the world. Then there's the judging and the perceptive. That is, the judging person manages his or her life typically by getting closure, by organizing, by planning in some fashion, managing the things in their life, in the outer world, managing one's environment. I know all of you have no idea what I'm talking about. The perceptive, the one who lives a perceptive lifestyle. Somebody described this to me once as that person who just has piles and piles of things on their desk. They know where absolutely everything is, and they know that they have to register for a conference, but they can't remember where the thing is. But when they find it, they know it's like only 2 days before the conference, and they have to register now, and they won't get to go. Somebody said, what do you think Amanda is? And somebody else said, have you looked at her desk? This typically results, the perceptive person is, I hope this is true, open, adaptable, flexible, and is one whose experience, who drives their experience of the outside world, not to order it, but to embrace it, to bring it close. So here we have in this story of Jesus in the temple, we have a crowd of people, all who are going to respond to what goes on in a different way. Each one will have a different perception of what's happened. The poor synagogue leader has had a different perception of what's happened because this is probably a man who is what? Orderly. You keep order in the environment around you. Well, now Jesus, we know, is probably a perceptive. Here's a man, an introvert, probably, because what does he like to do? He likes to go to a quiet place away to meditate and pray and renew himself, refresh himself, find his center, connect with God. And I'm not putting it past him. Maybe he does make a plan, but it's impossible to make a plan. Why? Because he responds to each person's need. Whoever comes in contact with him, whoever he sees who has a need, he immediately responds in that moment. Jesus would no more say, well, I'll see to that woman later. I'll finish preaching and I'll see to that woman later. Then, well, then maybe I would. I don't know. Jesus is one who will respond right now. In the chaos that must have erupted in that synagogue on that day, with the whole lot dancing around, going, woohoo, woohoo! And maybe a few other people joining in. Do you think anybody stood up and went, woohoo! Praise God! You think? Yeah, one or two, maybe. But there were a couple of other people in that synagogue who felt uncomfortable with the chaos. Don't you think? They may have felt very uncomfortable with the chaos, and perhaps like that orderly synagogue leader, who by the way, Luke has this wonderful line. I want you to picture this scene. I want you to picture the poor synagogue leader. Because it says, but the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd. So, as far as I'm concerned, in this scene, I see the crowd going wild. And the poor synagogue leader going, excuse me, there are 6 days. There are 6 days. There are 6 days. Chaos. Can't get anybody's attention. Nobody wants to pay attention to them because they're equally as excited as a holdup. Those who are not excited, however, are sitting there saying, well, I guess that blows the rest of the day. I'm going home. They get up and leave. And then there are others who are saying, well, I'm just too old to get up and rollick around. My hips don't work that well. I think I'll go down to the fellowship hall and make coffee. It's a good thing. It's a task-oriented thing. There are all sorts of people in that synagogue that day. And lest we want to go in the direction of saying there's something horribly wrong with that synagogue leader, we have to use this as a paradigm for the church. Because I want you, like Alice through the looking glass, to jump through the mirror and place yourself in that synagogue today. I want you to jump through the mirror and become part of that synagogue and tell me, with your personality, how you would have responded to what went on. I want you to think about where you would be in the context of that chaos. Would you celebrate the chaos? Would you fold your arms? Would you run to make coffee in the fellowship hall, or would you go home? What we need to know about ourselves in the church is this is a perfect reflection of what goes on with all of us. We all have different personalities. Some of us are INFPs, introverts, intuitive, feelers, perceptive. Some of us are ENTJs. We're extroverts, we're intuitives, we're thinkers, we're judgers. Some of us are INSPs, or ENSPs, or EJSTs, or We are all people with different personalities and different ways in which we relate to the world. Thus, and therefore, there are different ways that we are going to relate to each other. Everybody who is part of the worship team are going to have different ways of looking at things and different ways of operating. People who are on the finance committee are going to have different ways of operating with each other, different ways of thinking, and different ways of perceiving. People who are in the choir, not every one of them sings exactly like the next person or understands how to read notes exactly like the next person. However, they will sing as a cohesive group of people because they'll work it out. The church is called, in the context of all of the different personalities that we have, to focus on that one thing that binds us, that one thing that brings us together, always, Jesus Christ. We are called to focus ourselves somehow on the majesty and the glory of His Word. We are called to celebrate His gift. We are called to celebrate together whatever He does in our midst, whatever God does in our midst, however Jesus is moving and working in our midst. We celebrate that. And even if we can't dance with everybody else, let's just get up, go down to the fellowship hall, and make coffee for all of the thirsty revelers who are going to come after the celebration. Amen.